nailing down the final touches. I'm putting in a catch can, which in most cars that have been turbocharged, particularly aftermarket, you need to deal with all the oil blow-by. And I'm pretty excited because I finally found a use for a standard socket as a way to connect two hoses together. I mean, normally I have no use for them whatsoever, which is great. So our socket's going over there, and then we're going to weld this socket right to this intake. And these are, I think one's a power steering line, and I think the other one's a coolant line. I just kind of had them laying around. And it's great because they actually fit like really well. Like you'd swear that's supposed to be like that. Follows everything nicely. And then cheap little eBay catch can I got for free down here. It's going to be hidden behind the bumper, so it will not be in the engine bay per se. Alright, well, got a new RB26 turbo here, or at least the cartridge part of it. This is the old housings that I already had off my blown turbo. It's kind of the reason I got rid of the engine in the first place. I got tired of the turbo game, just went NA. And somehow this is the turbo that gave me that hit on my test drive. Don't know how. That... I'm to a degree speechless that was able to produce that much boost in this condition. So yeah, alright, so new guts. This is absolute junk, trash, completely blown, oil everywhere, fins are destroyed, it's useless. Again, I got the new cartridge up in here with these modified housing. You have to notch that in order to put this there. I did have to bend this so I could actually get it to dump down. And then, yeah. But other than that, I mean, it should work. I really just can't believe that this was in that condition. And it still gave me boost. Oh, man. That's crazy. So I've kind of been glossing over the fact that this even has a turbo on it. I know to y'all this would be like a big part of the build, but I already had it. It's kind of just like maintenance for me at this point, but I will cover what I've had to do. Obviously I did have to reclock this facing up. The way I had it set up on my Jetta, this was completely the other side. It was over here. I did run into a pretty big issue with reclocking this, was that I basically was barely able to get the wastegate to work. So coming under here, a turbo has to be facing down. This oil outlet has to be facing as close to perpendicular to the ground as possible. I do have that. It's pretty much a perfect 90. If you set this at a different angle, say 85, 70, whatever, the oil cannot drain properly from the turbo, you will blow the turbo. The factory wastegate actuator does have to bolt onto this. I had to bend this out the way, refit it, reposition it, and make sure that this, because this is going to push out as the wastegate opens, that I had enough clearance between these two parts. But this, I barely was able to pull this off, honestly. Like, I thought this was going to be a huge problem for me. I was going to have to maybe even switch turbos and get a new tune. But fortunately, I was able to kind of finagle this. So yeah, the turbo's all hooked up. I was in such a rush to build this, I completely forgot the flex pipe. So that flex pipe's going to go here-ish somewhere in the future. But for right now, I'm just trying to get this running. I think I did hear it hit once or twice here. I'll have to reposition that slightly. As you can see, it clears by like a fraction of a millimeter, so we gotta do something about that. At this point, this is a drivable car. It seems to work just fine. Pop the tune in there, take it for a spin around the block, and just kind of test drive it for a little bit longer, and then, you know, take all this apart for its respray. So with the new guts and the turbo, I'm going to go over a little bit why I landed on an RB26 turbo specifically for my 2.0 8-valve build. I basically wanted a turbo that would give me usable power. To a degree, don't care about horsepower figure, that final number, that dyno number. What I do care about is how quickly the turbo spools, how available boost pressure is at any RPM, and it's in general daily driving, which is between 1500 and like 4500 RPMs max. You're not hitting peak boost all that time. You're not hitting peak horsepower. What you are doing is really utilizing that turbo if you have it. And this fit the bill for me. RB26 turbo uses ceramic turbine blades, which makes the entire assembly a lot lighter. So basically it's kind of right in between a journal and a ball bearing as far as how well that turbine spins, which for $300, $250 used, you can't beat. So this turbo wound up being, to me, perfect for this engine setup, what I wanted, the boost pressures I wanted, and the daily driving ability that I wanted. And this car being 800 pounds lighter, it's going to be a very fun car with this setup. Well, I've been driving this off and on for about like a week. It's probably only done like 4 drives, and it's never quite worked right, and it's always had low vacuum. Unfortunately, I figured out why. Pretty much only a couple things that cause low vacuums, and sure enough, one of them's my problem. I got no intake manifold leaks. That's cylinder number 4. That's fine, that's 180. I was actually really surprised at just how relatively strong this motor is compression. So that was 180. I do love that this is just a turnkey. Like, it just works. It's great. Big fat nothing. It's been testing at like 80 to 120, or sorry, 90 to 120, but that is like 100 shy of what the other 3 cylinders are. So needless to say, something ain't right up in here. This motor did sit for 6 months. My money's on the valve train dried up and something stuck up there. So we get to tear this all apart. We will be shaving this bay, removing all this stuff I'm not using. I'm not using this, I'm not using that. I don't care about emissions at all, even a little bit. I'm cleaning all this up, probably make some sort of shield for it. I need to make some sort of bracket and get a handle on this mess that's over here. Ideally, in the future, I was debating whether I could run a full Volkswagen electric system, as in tie the harness into the Honda, say, headlights and stuff. Which would be kind of interesting because it would give it remote locking and other weird features, but we'll see how that goes. For now, we're probably just going to cut this spare wire. This whole bundle right here is just headlight stuff I don't use. That's horn. I'll never have a clock spring in this ever again, probably, so that just goes away forever. But yeah, we're pretty much ready to pull this motor. I'm waiting on parts. It should be here in a couple days. Break these pistons down, get new rings in it, rehone the cylinders, do all that good noise, and then yeah, pull this motor out, shave this bay, and make it look all nice. I was going to drive it around for a little bit, kind of get a feel for it, break it in, But I mean, I have to do this no matter what, so it makes sense just to say screw it and just go full send and just shave this bay, make it look real nice without actually knowing if the car is going to work 100%. So we'll see. I do have to raise this stupid thing up. This thing rides like, if I'm being generous by saying I've driven this car maybe a half mile at the most, and just anything that gets in its way is just way too low. I can't raise the engine up, really, because that'll start to screw with my axle angles, and the engine's already up on the hood. So for now, I'm just going to raise the car up, probably like a half inch, maybe a full inch. I really don't care. I can actually make it look low while having it be off the ground. Once I start putting fenders on and start doing this wide body, so I could actually have it pretty much max ride height, but actually have the fenders sit on the wheels. So we'll see. But as it sits, I gotta do something. It's basically undrivable as far as I'm concerned. It might be cool to scrape to y'all, but nah, to me it earns no points. It's a non-functioning car if it's too low to drive around streets. I've been kind of glossing over this engine rebuild, because I kind of forget I should be filming this stuff, but yeah, I had to kind of break the engine apart. I didn't know what was wrong with it. I decided to kind of start from scratch, just basically rebuild the motor, new bearings, new rings, new seals, and 2 new valves in the affected cylinder. And so right now we're just going to clean up these cylinder walls and start putting it back together. Alright, so we are back at it again with this. I have the engine out. I was going to paint it anyway. I need to paint pretty much every single component here, so that's why it's coming out. Plus I need to dress up this engine bay, which is what I'm getting into right now. I got a lot of stuff going everywhere. We need to hide this. This is for the Honda lights. This is catch can stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Shorten that. I will be... Jeez, where does this even start? This power steering line's way too long. It's just kind of where it was when I connected it. But now we're going to shorten it. I'm probably going to basically connect it directly right there. Take that off and connect it to this end. And now I'll get rid of all this that just kind of pointlessly goes around the engine bay. I've made a fuse panel down here, which you can't see. This is where the fuse panel goes. I will be making a plate that covers this whole thing because the tire comes incredibly close to this, obviously being in the fender well, and I don't want it hitting. And then we're going to place a junction box where I have that shop towel serving as an insulator to make an actual proper insulator for that 12-volt battery line that goes right there. I had to raise this motor mount up an inch to match the other side, me raising it an inch. This gives me about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 of clearance from the road, which is very acceptable. It was way too low earlier, and I just raised that with a plate, and I'll be covering this whole hole up somehow. I'm not really sure how, probably some sheet metal, just tack welded, and to protect that from all the water coming in. And we will be, first of all, cleaning up this hackneyed gash that I got going on back here just to get these wires through. But most importantly, we will be getting rid of this. All of this mess of lines. We'll be replacing this ABS block with a non-ABS block out of the same car. It's a proportioning valve, so it's actually pretty important. I can't just like split it and do whatnot. So I'm just going to run this. And I'm probably going to put it down somewhere under the car because it doesn't need to be up here. It's just full of fluids, no real whatever to it. But I got just everything apart. This is the block that's getting painted black. That is the trans that is getting painted silver. It's the old Honda motor. That's just junk. And Cylinder head gets painted silver again, and pretty much everything else gets painted black or silver, and it'll look all nice and pretty. Right now I am just removing this hose at the steering rack, and then we're going to run the Volkswagen reservoir right to it, as opposed to this really unnecessarily complicated system I had earlier, which literally just went everywhere, but I hadn't torn into this as deeply as I have now. So right now, yeah, we're just popping this off. I've come to the kind of puzzling. I've come to the conundrum of what power steering fluid to run. Do we run what the Volkswagen power steering pump should have, or do we run what the Honda steering rack should have? I think I literally don't know. My heart tells me to go with whatever the Honda rack would take for the seals, but that's probably different viscosity than what the Volkswagen pump would take. So yeah, I literally don't know. I'll figure that out later, I guess. So yeah, I pretty much just had to remove that crazy zigzag section, and it wound up basically just fitting. I didn't even have to cut this hose at all. It just went right where it needed to be. So much cleaner power steering system. Alright, so I'm starting the task of hooking up this junction block. I decided to stick in the fender because A, there's some bolt holes that are right there, and I'm kind of lazy at this point because I just want to drive this car. So it's going to go right there. Nothing can hit it. The wheel ain't going to hit it. Nothing's really in its way, so it's going to be fine just there. I might hit it with some sort of coating so it doesn't really corrode. But that's going to be its home. Right now I got my little legend out telling me what's what. It's not the same from car to car, so I can't just go straight off that. So I did have to remember how this non-ABS was hooked up, so I made a little video, and yeah, I got my little legend. So now it's just a matter of plugging it in, basically, making flares along the way.